But let's go ahead and get to Prince William's recent talk because he did get emotional about it. And I don't know how much we can share, but this is, they call it Rhian's story here. And obviously here is the content warning. And again, I'm not a full fan of always having content warnings on things. Sometimes I think they get a little bit overwrought, but I do think in this particular occasion, it is important to, like, if people have an issue with some of these things, obviously this discusses, you could see it right there. And it's just weird that YouTube won't let you say certain things, but he decided to end his life after the death of his child. So I just wanted to make sure people were aware of that before we started the video, because I haven't actually watched the whole thing yet, but I just did think, because we did have two people who did things entirely for themselves. Let's look at somebody who's highlighting somebody else. And in this case, William is highlighting this family's tremendous loss and the impact that suicide has. So let's go ahead.
Everyone loved Paul. Everybody. Always pinched myself when we were together that he'd chosen me really to be the one to marry. We very quickly got pregnant.
That's very sweet. Sorry, I do have to pause, guys, for copyright reasons, so you'll have to excuse me.
Had Holly, our eldest, and then went on very quickly to have Isaac. George was our third. He was just an incredible addition to the family, you know, and everyone used to say that he was the happiest little boy ever.
Oh, it's so sweet.
Did we take it for granted? Probably. I think a lot of people do at that age. We just presumed life would take us on that normal journey of growing old together. I'd only been back teaching a couple of days after my maternity leave when George fell ill at home.
So sadly, George did pass away, which we'll get to here, but it's so sad because some things you just can't, you know, not relationships, but, you know, you think you've done everything right, and, you know, an illness can still occur and there's maybe nothing you can do about it.
Very suddenly. So we had to call an ambulance to come out to the home. He was rushed to hospital. You never think anything bad's going to happen because this is your family. You see these things happen on TV.
I think that's true. People think these type of things won't happen to them, and then they're surprised.
Sadly, George was very poorly, and within 2 hours of being admitted to the hospital, he died.
Wow, that's crazy.
5 days later, after we lost George, probably the unimaginable really happened, something that we could never have ever been prepared for. Which
is, I think, on this gentleman's part, so incredibly cruel.
Totally unexpected was Paul walked out of the house and took his own life. It's really difficult to explain how grief feels. Emptiness.
That's so sad, especially that they had 2 other children. I didn't realize that at first.
Physical pain. Your heart hurts. You know, your limbs hurt, you ache. But when you lose somebody to suicide, it leaves so many questions unanswered.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly true. Something so many people deal with. And I love this again, and the reason we're watching this is that even William doesn't even show up in the video for the first little bit here, because it's really on her telling her story, because her story is one people can feel a connection to. She was, you know, they were living their life. Everything was fine. A child gets sick, and then her husband decides to do the unimaginable right after. And I feel like people, they've experienced similar things like that. And I think that's something that so many people can feel a sympathy towards and an understanding of. Not 2 people in Manhattan getting whisked around, I'm sure, by NYPD officers, probably staying in the Carlisle, getting the best care imaginable, and them talking on a stage and telling you, oh, we don't know what childhood is like anymore. No, like people see this story and they connect to it, and it makes whatever the royals do with it more powerful in so many ways.
But I'm hoping by having increased awareness around what it is, but also the effects it has on those left behind, what causes people to walk out and never come home.
Yeah, because it is a question I'm sure people have. It's hard because you don't ever really know sometimes, and you think everything's been discussed, but you just don't always know.
Let's stand together. Let's talk about it. Let's get people in the public eye talking about it. We can help each other. This really doesn't have to be what happens.
So I don't know if you guys can tell, you guys, you can't really see it from this angle, but if you go back here, you can see that this has happened, I would say probably at least 10 plus years ago at the very least, because those are her two children there, and they look like they're in their teens now. So so Rhian shared her devastating experience with Prince William when they first met in 2017. They're meeting again to pick up the conversation back up and work together on suicide prevention.
Rhian.
So what I love about this is that obviously it shows a long connection there between the two of them. And I really, really like that. And that is amazing because it's like he met her in 2017. It's 8 years later and he's still thinking about her story, still focusing on her story. And I feel like it shows that if you meet a particular person and their story really resonates with you, that he remembers that and he wants to, because she wants to share her story to help others, he wants to help her do that.
How are you?
Hello.
So nice to see you.
Oh, so nice
After
to
all this
see
time.
you.
You did mention to come to your house a long time ago,
did,
so
you did.
I'm now here.
Well, welcome and come on in.
Thank you.
So my mum made you a cake,
Yeah, this looks very impressive. Look
but
at this.
she also wanted you to have some of her Welsh cakes, so...
I love that her mother made cake. That is awesome. Her mom's maybe like, oh, you don't know how to make cake very well, dear. The prince is coming. I need to make the cake for you. I feel like that's a very mother thing.
Yes, well, can I prioritise a Welsh cake first? Would that be right?
Absolutely,
Because
yes.
I do love those.
Would you like to put them on the plate?
Yeah, put them out.
Yeah.
William is definitely a cake guy. He definitely has a sweet tooth. Again, we had the whole discussion last month or two ago about his brownie addiction. So
How have you been there, Rhian? Because I obviously haven't caught up with you for a long time.
It's up and down. Everything's up and down. Life's up and down anyway, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But both of my kids are flourishing, and Isaac's turning into quite a nice little rugby player. And he plays the same position as Paul, would you believe?
I did.
So that...
oh, that's so sweet. I like this kind of very casual conversation. Obviously it's set up. They know the cameras are there and everything, but it feels very natural.
That's really nice as well. So, yeah.
Good.
So I'm
Was Paul massively into his rugby then, was he?
Yeah, he played a lot of rugby, hockey and cricket at a very high level. Okay. So, yeah. And Isaac definitely takes after him. So, yeah.
That's really sweet that she can say, well, my son takes after him in this way, and I love it, and that's awesome.
It looks very much like him as well. Sporty gene, yes. Although the children yesterday told everyone that I don't have any sporty genes, which is worrying when I used to be a PE teacher.
Yes.
So,
I'm not sure you take that line now.
no.
And this looks like maybe she has remarried, so I think that's... well, I'll be interested to hear if she shares that or not. But yeah, I thought that was super sweet. She's like, I don't have the sporty gene, but my son does. My husband did. So George, Paul, and Gigi, and Dee Dee. So that maybe was her father or something. There's her son and her daughter.
Rhian, how have you managed to bring up your children so brilliantly as you have? How have they managed to thrive?
They've just grown up to be incredible kids and young adults.
I like that. That's a great question. I think William is asking, how do you, what has it been like for the kids?
I look back and I still don't really know how we survived it. People ask me that a lot, like, how do you do it? And I don't really know.
I actually think that's probably quite true in some ways, is that because you're just kind of surviving, And in an actual situation where survival is really a huge factor in it, you probably just don't remember everything.
So young, the memories they've got now are memories that probably I've placed into their minds. I still worry a lot about what tomorrow's going to bring our family. But when I'm trying to be rational and trying to think positively,
Yeah, I'm sure that's true because they were so young that, how much of it is their memory versus how much of it is the one she shared that they've kind of internalized.
I just want my children to be happy.
And unfortunately, there's still a lot of stigma around suicide. Did you feel that at the time?
I was quite surprised by it. I'd never been touched by suicide. It was something that happened in the news. Nobody would talk about it or actually say what happened.
I'm sure that's true, and that is sort of, I feel like, a hard thing because you don't want to glamorize it or over talk about it too much because there is something about like the contagion of it. But at the same time, it's good to like be able to ask people and hear about what's going on in their lives, not just saying I'm guilty of this, saying, "Oh, how are you? I'm fine. How are you?" when I've had a lousy day and I just say I'm fine. Sometimes, although it's sometimes overwhelming when people just like divulge everything that's gone wrong in their week with you, but I think for to have a good relationship, you need to ask questions. You need to be there to listen to somebody, even in if sometimes like it's uncomfortable. And I'm sure it is something that for certain people they just felt uncomfortable and like, well, if we don't mention it, then we can act like it didn't exist or we use euphemisms or something. And I think sometimes, yes, that's okay, but sometimes it's good to address things head on too.
And I found that really confusing at the time.
And obviously, your children were very young when this happened. Many families probably might struggle to work out, do we talk about it, do we not?
Yeah.
What's your advice on that?
Great question. That's a really, really good question because again, you don't want to scare children, but at the same time too, I think it's good to have an element of truth so that way you can talk about things and you can recognize things. And also, they're not caught unawares by somebody who doesn't know they don't know X and that person happens to say it and then they're shocked.
I think it's important never to lie. There's ways in being truthful and just being gentle. As a parent, you know your children better than anybody else.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's kind of like even in a very micro level when, I worked retail or something, sometimes you had to change up how you said something to somebody just because it worked better for them. So I think that's 100% a true case here.
The families I've spoken to who've had to endure suicide is a lot of unanswered questions that live with you forever, really, don't they?
I will forever go over those last few days with him wondering what I missed.
I think that would drive me nuts, to be quite honest. I would be constantly running it through my mind again and again and again and again and again. What did I miss? What's there? And how could I have done more? And I think that would, and I hate to say it because I'm not wanting to criticize the person too much, but I think it's cruel of people to do that in terms of suicide because I just think it's cruel because the unanswered questions I feel like is awful. It's like they're trying to purposely cause more pain to people in their own selfish pursuits. Sorry, just putting that out there.
Before we lost George, we were just so happy. And I think this just shows that it really can happen to anyone.
If you could say something or wanted to say something to Paul, what would you have said?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's a hard, and I'm sure one again she goes over again and again. And yeah, Miss Chloe is so right. Chloe Celeste, he's not talking about himself. He's not. He's asking her questions. And I think that's so important. And Pat, yes, you are talking way too much. I am talking too much. I do have to pause it every once in a while, or usually about every 15 seconds is the general rule for copyright reasons. And so I think that is unfortunate, but that's the reality of sort of how YouTube works. And so I do want to apologize for that. But that's just sort of how it has to go. Stacy says everyone jumped on me and Brittany just said it too. I've been in this exact situation and I'm now a widow. I'm so sorry to hear that, Stacy. I really, really am. And I can't even begin to imagine what the challenges of that are. So let's keep listening, because there is one point here where William gets quite emotional.
There's only one thing I would ever say to him if I had time with him, and that would be, why didn't you speak to me? I think I ask myself that every single day. He was absolutely devastated. He did keep blaming himself that weekend. But I would just like to sit him down like this and just say, why didn't you come to me? Because he's missed out on just so much joy. And
Yeah, I think, yeah, talking to people is so incredibly important.
we would have been okay. And I think that's what the hardest thing is. We would have been okay. You okay?
I'm sorry, it's hard to ask you questions that I know.
Hard, and
it is.
So I think William as well, because he has experienced those sorts of things, not in the same way, but obviously the sudden death of someone, and I'm sure the unanswered questions, with his mom, and sort of the suddenness of the relationship being ended. That's something he can't understand the suicide aspect as much as she can, but he can have an empathy there for the suddenness of a loss. And I think he experiences that, and he doesn't want to, I think, overwhelm her, and he feels uncomfortable asking these questions, which I think is great, because it is sometimes hard to ask questions of people when it's going to bring somebody up, or bring something up. But I also think he does a great job of navigating this, and really, again, putting the emphasis on her and her story, not on himself.
Experience lost yourself.
It's okay.
Life can throw you these awful curveballs, but by talking about it, by, having hope, you can continue.
I think that's true. Having hope is one of the most powerful emotions you can have. There's a Bible verse, what is it now? Perseverance produces character, hope, something to that effect. But it's a series of suffering produces, I can't remember the whole thing, but it's like basically suffering, when you go through it, if you have, let's say, if you're leaning on the right things, you can get to this point of hope. And I think hope is a very, very powerful, powerful thing. And when people lose hope, it sort of can result in devastating consequences. And I think that's what he experienced. And I've heard people say as well that suicide is a final solution to a temporary problem. And there was another way to have dealt with this, that, obviously suicide will always be a part of human experience, which is very sad. And we can't get always away from it. But I think if we can tell people more and more, hey, this is a temporary situation, and what you're thinking of doing is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I think that's a great way to look at it.
Best way to prevent suicide is to talk about it. Talk about it early, talk about it with your loved ones, those you trust, your friends. So thank you for talking about it.
And thank you for talking about it too.
Aw, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. It says in the UK here, somebody dies by suicide every 90 minutes, but it doesn't have to be this way.
Oh, look who's here.
Oh, there's her mom. That's so sweet. I like that the moms and kids are there. That's so cute. That's so cute.
Chris, how are you?
Very well.
Very nice to see you.
And you too.
Thank you so much for letting me come and chat to Rhian, your mum. It's been lovely seeing her again and having a chat. So thank you so much. I'm going to take the wash cakes with me and have them in the car on my back.
There we go.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Also, she got a member of the British Empire. Or is it member? I can't really remember. Yeah.
There we go.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a safe trip and a good rest of the day.
Lovely to see you.
And you.
See
Take
soon.
care.
Nice to meet you all.
Take care. Bye.
I like his car here too. It's actually kind of nondescript. Like, it's a Range Rover or whatever, but it's not like, he's not showing up there in a Bentley or those sorts of things.
You all right?
Aw.
Hey? He's taking you to Tupperware. Okay.
Aw. You could tell she was kind of emotional when he left. It says talking about suicide is essential to prevent it. The Royal Foundation is uplifting charities across the 4 home nations to transform suicide prevention in the UK through a new national suicide prevention network.
Not really a typical Thursday. What are you saying? On the Welsh cable.
I kind of like actually this ending here. I think it's actually really, really good because what it's doing is, and I really love this, is that it's showing that things move on. And I think that's really okay. Oh, Jacqueline, thank you so much. So, helping with the Bible verse there, he says, "We know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." So that's just, I think, a great sometimes way to think about it. And I really always have loved that. But yeah, I pretty much had it. That's good. It's like sometimes it's like something so well, but then you're trying to do it in a different circumstance and just totally like blows your brain. So I think that's a great interview. Elizabeth calls it groundbreaking and heart-wrenching interview. I'm so proud he's going to be our king. Yes, I feel like this was a great interview. And again, I love how this ended because it's them going back into the house and showing that life goes on and that there is hope after tragedy. And I think that's so important for people to hear because I'm sure especially I imagine at the time that having those 2 situations, so the death of her son and the suicide of her husband happened so close together was just so incredibly overwhelming for her, as it would be for anyone to experience both of those things at the same time. That's just, it's unfathomable, like, the compounding grief. And so how do you navigate that is it's really important. And we do have Lady Roxanne Perez who says Lady Gabrielle's husband committed the same as Rhian's husband. Yes. So that happened last year. And, and what's terrible about that as well is that particular situation was twisted by some very, very nasty people to like claim there was some sort of like relationship struggle between the 3 of them. So, or the 4 of them, really, Catherine and William and Gabriella and her husband, Tom, I think his name was, and or Gabrielle's husband, totally horrific, horrific, horrific things. And there is and it can happen so suddenly. He was particularly on meds. That's sort of what they have come to is he was on particular meds, I think for sleeping related issues. And they feel like that really messed with his brain quite a bit. And it was just so horrible and tragic and sudden. And so Williams experienced that, I think, even more because he and Lady Gabriella Windsor, I mean, I don't think say they were close, but he was definitely close with her brother, Lord Frederick. And so I feel like he was at least, aware of them. He didn't go to their wedding, him and Catherine didn't. But obviously when they go to weddings, it's always kind of a big, big deal. But it's challenging for sure to navigate those things. And Lizzie B says, there's hope after tragedy. That's a very good message, Miss Brittany. Yes, yes, there's always hope there. And so that's so important. Gretchen the First says, who's been a member for 17 months, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry would have loved the impact of Princess Catherine and Prince William in things like this video, but lack the empathy or self-awareness to come anywhere close. Yes, because even when they were launching, Harry and Meghan were launching the Parents Network on CBS, the interview spent most of its focus and effort on Harry and Meghan. It's like, I don't care about Harry and Meghan in this situation because William was, of course, very smart, which is to focus on the person who has experienced the tragedy. Because that person who's experienced a tragedy can 150% kind of convey things much better and elicit more empathy than Harry and Meghan in that particular situation. Because Harry and Meghan, it would be all about Meghan and her alleged ideation at one point. And they would have talked about it for a while. And then it would have gotten to, oh, let's talk to this person. Because that's how they did it in CBS. Because it's really always about them and their struggles rather than other people. And even in that particular interview with the Parents Network, I didn't even think, well, number one, the parents barely got time to speak. And one in particular, and this was just something where I was like, I had to have my mom watch it because I haven't raised kids, but I could never imagine my mom saying it because my mom was a super involved and engaged parent. And the woman they had interview, who was not, I don't think, the best reflection of their organization at all, just went basically, well, he had a job, he had a car, he was fine. And, then he ended his own life. And like, a car and a job does not equate to happiness. And what are you missing? And you're like blaming the algorithm for it when you clearly were missing something going on in your son's life. Like, I hate to see it. I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news or too critical or whatever. But if you're just you're throwing your hands up and going, well, I don't know what happened. Well, I would argue then you're really not like you were not as connected to your son in that instance as you should have been. I'm not trying to be rude or critical or anything, but I don't think that's a great lesson. And even if, there's some situations where, obviously we don't know everything that happened in Rhian's situation, but we focused on the things that I think are good to focus on rather than focusing on things that I feel like muddy the water. And Harry and Meghan's team, which I feel like they've done quite a few times, did not help people in communicating. I don't feel like Harry and Meghan helped this woman actually be able to communicate her about what happened with her son, because it was basically like he was fine. He had a job, he had a car. All of a sudden he's gone. And I don't know why. And, you could say some of those things, but it also made her, I don't think, come across very well either. And then there was another parent that they brought up, and their kid had bought a drug through social media and had overdosed. And it's like, well, that's not really a social media problem. That was a drug addiction problem. So why are we equating all these things together? And I feel like Williams, again, the message there was very simple, clean, and efficient. This is what happened. We need to talk about it. The one thing, because this is all about talking, the importance of talking through issues. The one thing she would do if she could is to talk him and ask him to talk to her and share what was going on. And then how do you talk to your kids, and how do other people talk with you? These sorts of things. It was all encompassing, which is actually, again, I'm processing it in real time with you guys. What I love about it is that it's all about communication and talking. That was the message that the video is trying to send, is talk about what's going on in your life, talk about the issues you're having, find someone within your community, your friendship group, your family, whatever. If you're having something going on, talk to them about it. And that was the message of the video. Whereas I watched the Harry and Meghan thing, I was like, oh, we got the Parents Network with parents who had a spectrum of things happen to their children on social media. And Harry going, well, if your kid's rolling around in their room on their iPad, you don't want to know what they're doing. And then again, the question becomes, why is your kid alone with an iPad in their room? That's an incredibly stupid thing to do as a parent. If your kid is like 10 or even any age, really, wait till they're 18. That's just, again. Steven says Harry and Meghan, who's been a member for 9 months. Thank you so much, Steven. Says Harry and Meghan for 5 years tells us there is a problem. Yeah. And don't really offer any solutions. Whereas I feel like William's not really offering solutions, because in some ways there's just, people are going to be people. And unfortunately, they're going to do terrible, tragic things. There's just not a lot you can do to address that in some ways. But what he's telling us is that there is a really important issue there, which is talking. Let's talk. And I think that's a great message to convey. And Renee said, I think things resonate with William because of Catherine's cancer, losing a child, losing his mother, and being totally empathetic with her. Such a difference. Yes, I would agree right now that with William going through Catherine's cancer battle with her, I think he's a lot more sensitive to some of these things, because I imagine in some ways, I'm not saying exactly what he thought because I don't know, but your mind goes to some dark places. And I think that's something that's even more Like, I'm sure he was reeling from the idea that his mother died when he was so young. And then all of a sudden, his wife, who's so healthy, all of a sudden, she has this cancer diagnosis. And I'm sure in some ways, mentally, it was like he was back to being 15 again. And his mother passing suddenly. And she was in the prime of her life. His wife's in the prime of her life. Now, I think she probably had some health issues leading up to the surgery and the cancer diagnosis. I don't think, but like they just thought it was going to be this surgery, this one thing, and then it became bigger and bigger and bigger, and everything that happened. So I think William, in so many ways, is so much more empathetic about it, which I think is quite amazing.